This weekend, New York Times columnist Jamelle Bouie wrote this about Donald Trump's relationship with Natalie Harp. The reason the Harp story matters is that it is further confirmation of one essential fact of the Trump White House, that the president exists in a degraded, chaotic information environment. He rejects information that is gathered and collected for the purpose of informing him and is highly reliant instead on counsel from people who have no incentive to contradict him and every incentive to tell him what he wants to hear or what they want him to hear. Trump has dismantled every institutional structure designed to curb the worst aspects of the presidency, a tendency toward isolation and groupthink, and has instead sunk deeper into his own propaganda and invented reality. In Donald Trump's invented reality, the Strait of Hormuz is wide open and has been for months now to shipping, even though he and Natalie Harp are the only people who could possibly believe that or even fantasize about that. Last week, Donald Trump promised an economic D-Day, as he put it, would hit Iran. And today, his Treasury Secretary also promised that economic D-Day, but not today. The actual D-Day in World War II was a secret. It was not broadcast ahead of time. It was the best kept secret in the history of war and the most effective secret in the history of war. And when American troops landed on the beaches of Normandy in the face of deadly German fire, they were accompanied by their allies in the British Army, along with allied soldiers from other countries, Ireland, Australia, and of course, importantly, Canada. Hundreds of Canadian soldiers were killed on D-Day, side by side with their American comrades. And now Donald Trump has brought his economic D-Day strategy to Canada, but has not yet tried to impose it on Iran.
You described this as an economic D-Day, but D-Day wasn't a threat of an invasion, and the U.S. didn't give a timeline to Germany. So why not impose the sanctions today?
Well, we are giving everyone the opportunity to remedy bad behavior. Why would I want to blow up the global financial system? We believe that it is important to level set and give people a cure period, but they should know that that will move very quickly and that we are serious.
Joining us now is retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral John Kirby, his former White House National Security Communications Advisor, and is an MS Now National Security Analyst. Admiral Kirby, I want to get to this, I feel, nonsensical use of the phrase D-Day for something that you're warning about publicly ahead of time. And begin with what Jamelle Bouie identified as, at this point, the president exists in a degraded, chaotic information environment. As we take in more descriptions of that environment from Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's book and other reporting, what is your assessment of how that kind of environment leaves a commander-in-chief during war?
It closes down his decision-making space, Lawrence. I mean, one of the things I've observed in my years in government are the best leaders are the ones that really avail themselves of a true diversity of opinion. And two, they make it clear to their subordinates that they want their ideas to be challenged. They want to be told if they're thinking about something the wrong way. They want as much latitude as they should when it comes to national security to make their decisions in a thoughtful, deliberate way and really have given enough consideration to the pros and the cons, the risks, as well as the gains from any decision that they're making. So if, in fact, this is the information bubble exists that Mr. Trump is making decisions in, then he's not being served well. We all want the commander in chief to be served well, and if he's not being exposed to a diversity of opinions, and quite frankly, if he's not willing, if he's sending the signal that he doesn't want, he's actually hurting himself and his ability to make better decisions.
So the whole concept of an economic D-Day with Iran seems to be a way of using war language so that Donald Trump can pretend he is still, in some sense, waging his war while he actually stops war-making activity. Maybe that's the calculation to get from here to the elections, is to only be engaged in what he's claiming is an economic war with Iran. How would that work?
Well, it's not going to work on a number of levels. I think they're using the D-Day branding as sort of to sound muscular. But of course, as you know, in military language, D-Day vernacular means that's the day you start an operation. Nothing started today. It was really just a threat to maybe put in international sanctions going forward. But history does not bode well for the idea of trying to bring a war to an end just through sanctions. There's only one example back in the 90s with Bosnia where sanctions, UN sanctions, by the way, not just U.S. sanctions, actually helped get Milosevic back to the table, but it also took additional bombing, too. So there's not a good track record here, and these weren't sanctions that were announced. The other thing about it is it only works if you have partners. You talked about D-Day and our allies in your opening, and you're right. We had a dozen allies hitting those beaches with us. You can't do something like what Mr. Bessent wants to do without allies and partners engaged in that. And right now we're a coalition of one. The other thing that is concerning is that the devil's got to be in the details. The only way sanctions bite is if they're fully implemented. You can just bet yourself in your next paycheck that Iran is going to find a way to get around it. And I was very intrigued by what Mr. Bessent said about China today. He really soft-pedaled on China. If China's not on board with this regime, then it's really not going to work. They get 90% of their oil from Iran, and they have workarounds in the past. So, I want the regime to come to the table. I'm glad that they're looking for ways to do this short of bombing. I don't want to begrudge them their creativity here, but I'm skeptical because sanctions just typically don't work in the middle of a war. And this regime has shown no propensity to be driven by economic considerations of their own people.
Admiral John Kirby, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Yes, sir.